What's up, kids? How you doing? It's Mr. Zero of Mr. Zero's Chair Ride, playing with a act ukulele that my wife bought me for my birthday, I think, a couple years ago. I don't know how to play it, mostly because I just never took the time to, and this one has a hard time staying in tune, so I don't really feel a need to learn on it, and I just like to make noises. That's all I do with it. I do a lot of bluesy type messing around with it, but I haven't made a video in a while, and I feel kind of bad about that. So I thought, because I just don't know what to talk about most of the times. I've used up all my best topics. So one thing I thought I could talk about, and I didn't even bring the book down here, but I've begun reading Clown by Emmett Kelly yet again. I've read this book several times in my life. But what's interesting about reading it now is, because I've been doing research on Otto Griebling, who is also another tramp clown, really famous with Ringling Brothers, and just not as famous as Emmett Kelly. I think a lot of it has to do with self-promotion. I think Emmett Kelly really wanted, small town boy, wanted to make it big, and he put a lot of effort in him. A lot of people's accounts were that Otto was a much better clown, and from what footage I've seen of the two, I would agree with that. I think Otto is a lot more interesting to watch, and that's just my personal opinion. But I think that Emmett Kelly just wanted the fame more. He worked harder to get more famous. I mean, he wrote an autobiography, for heaven's sakes, you know. So I think that's where it all stands. And in reading the book, you kind of get that you know, he really was trying hard to make something of himself, and he works really hard. He's a really hard worker. Had no intention of ever being a clown. He wanted to be a cartoonist or an artist. That's one of the things he puts in his, you know, like, it wasn't my intention to be a clown. It was, he wanted to be an artist, and he had a routine in order to try to reach his goal. He had a routine called a chalk talk routine. I've never seen one of these before, so I don't know really how to describe it, but it involves him drawing cartoons in front of live in front of people, and he decided to start doing it in whiteface, as in the book he says he saw the burlesque comedians do, and so he started dressing up as a clown. And I think it's interesting to note because he started achieving fame in around World War II, and by the time the 60s rolled around, he was a well-established, famous clown. And this is about the time where they started coming up with the idea for the clown college, because all the clowns were getting really old and they weren't getting new clowns in, so they started up the clown college. Which is an interesting thing to think, is, you know, build it, they will come. So we'll start a clown college and we'll train kids to be clowns the way they wanted them to be, and that would get, that they could restock their clowns that way. And of course, you know, it was a huge success. It worked really well. And so now you go and there's all these clowns, and they have very similar, I wouldn't say that they're the same, but they have a similar kind of look. You can tell a Ringling clown from a not Ringling clown. If they have a clown that's from a different circus coming in, you can see a difference, you know. And I did a video all about this being a Ringling clown, but it's interesting to know that within this man's timeline, they decided to start this clown college, and I don't know if he had anything to do with it, Emmett Kelly, but he had no training as a clown, Emmett Kelly. He had no, you know, it was just something that he just started doing, and it's kind of what helped him get famous, is that he was doing stuff that wasn't super typical of clowns of his era. He wasn't performing just to kids. In fact, he talked about how kids really didn't know what to make of him. It was more something that the adults liked, but kids did like him. He talked about going to England after World War II and traveling with the bird. I think it was the Bertram Mills Circus, and going into the audience, and he'd go up into the nosebleed section to visit the poorer kids. And he says, when he used to do that, they'd sit there and hold out their candy bags or popcorn bags for him to take some from them, and they'd always have plenty of candy in there. And he said that after World War II, it broke his heart to go through that area, and the kids would hold out their candy bags for him to take some candy from them, and they'd have a handful of pieces in the bag for them to munch on during the performance. So he would mime like he'd take something and put it in his mouth, and then move on. He said that he heard one of the kids say, "Mom, you didn't take one," and it broke his heart. There's a lot of heartbreaking stories in there. There's in the book. That is one of them. There's also a really sad story about a huge fire. I think it happened in Hartford, Connecticut. I haven't yet gotten to this part in the book, but it's this huge fire. The tent burnt down with Ringling Brothers. I think it was Ringling Brothers that he was with at the time. And he talks about running around in his clown shoes, grabbing a water bucket as if that was going to help. He was just in a panic, and he grabbed his water bucket that he would use to wash his face after the show, and he's running with that in his clown attire. And he says right there that probably looked like a clown routine that would have been brilliant. But and he talks about how many people died, and all the fact that so many kids died, and it was a really tragic fire, and I'm surprised you don't hear about it much. And I have tried to look up information just regarding it. Apparently, he was on the cover of the newspaper. They took a picture of him sitting there with his clown his clown attire, looking really mournful and sad, as he always did, but more so because he really was sad at the events of the day. Huge tragedy, but of course the circus did rebuild. This was in a time when it was in like 42, maybe. This was in a time when spirit of the Blitz and all that. But it's a good autobiography. It's well enough. Emmett Kelly from the book comes off as a really decent country boy, farm boy who just wanted to do something more with his life and travel around the world. And he did. He was very successful in that endeavor. And he wasn't very successful. He wanted to get into movies. He did a handful of movies. I own one of them called I don't even know what. It's terrible. Oh, it's a terrible movie. I can't sit through it. It's if it's that bad where I can't sit through it, where I'm like, I've got better things to do than watch this, then it's a terrible movie. Because I like to just sit, chill, and watch movies. But he also was in, of course, The Greatest Show on Earth with Charlton Heston and James Stewart. I can't remember the name of the actress in that. And someone's going to sit there and say, "Oh, it was this woman?" And I'm sure she was quite famous for the time. But and that's a fun little movie to watch if you ever have a free afternoon. Check it out. But Emmett Kelly is in the movie, but not. He's not. He has no speaking parts, of course, because he's playing himself. He's playing the clown that he is. I think Otto Greenling is also in that movie, but I'm not certain about that. But yeah, I just thought I'd bring that up, reading that book again. I just kind of dig it because I'm taking Mr. Zero into different directions. Some of them incorporate more of the hobo look, because I like the look of the hobo clown. I think a lot of people do. And as the hobo clown, it is a more grown-up kind of character. It's not just for kids, I think. Apparently a lot of burlesque performers and vaudeville performers would do a more hobo-style character. Red Skelton did that. And it wasn't like Red Skelton couldn't be performed in front of kids, but I think adults would get the jokes a bit more. There's one Emmett Kelly talks about how when Prohibition ended, he had made this liquor moonshine kit that he would carry around with a moonshine kit for sale cheap, and he'd carry that around, and that was his gag. That was what him doing a routine, is walking around like that. He had like these really effective little like bits that he would do. He had a one where he'd put a peanut on the ring. There's a technical term for the ring, and I can't remember what it was, but it's the ring around the circus. He would put a peanut there, take a sledgehammer out and hit the peanut, and be upset that he destroyed everything, destroyed the whole peanut, made peanut butter essentially. But lots of fun reading this book, and I guess that's all I have to say. So thanks for watching.